I knitted a second scarf, and it took 10,000 years. I'm 80 million years old now, and I want to address some of the comments that you left on my first scarf. First of all, I know that this is not crochet. I know the difference between knitting and crochet, and this was knitting 2 sticks, banging together. Second of all, how dare you call me Cam from Modern Family? I am clearly a Mitch. Third of all those people being like, oh, I like knitting better. I like knitting better because you use less yarn. I want to use the yarn. I want the ball to go away. So this is too much of a scarf. It's long. There's holes in them for no reason. And I'm not going to knit for a long time because I want to get back to life.
Here's everything I knit in 2024. Let's start from the top. 2024 was the year that I learned how to knit for real. So the first sweater I made, I actually gave to my sister. I'll pop up some pictures on the screen, and that was an experience. The next sweater and second sweater that I knit was this little pink number here. This is the Monday sweater by pt.10. I started off with pt.10 patterns. They were pretty straightforward and simple. My next finished sweater was this one here. This is the Daydreamer cardigan by Kotova Kika. This is a Cezanne Emily dupe, but if the dupe was more time consuming and a little expensive to make, this was really fun to knit. I will probably end up replacing these buttons just because I think they look a little comical. We'll be adding another button and a buttonhole to the top of this. Really like the way that this came out. I love the details on the sleeves, and I would say this was pretty beginner friendly. This was only the third sweater that I started. The next thing that I knit in 2024 is this beautiful My Pride and Joy sweater number 15 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I don't want to pick favorites, but I'm gonna pick favorites. This is my favorite sweater, and I just love the color of this so much. I feel like I've never met a color that looks better on my skin tone than this one. For a beginner pattern, I think this is really great, and I think the satisfaction of just having something come from your hands is so worth the time and the money. Worn her nonstop. That's why she has earned the #1 spot for things that I made in 2024. And this is the last sweater that I finished in 2024. This is the Stockholm V-neck by Petite Knit. I started this in May. I did my best. I worked hard at it for a month, and then I was just like, if I try to finish this, I'm never gonna knit again. I wanted the look of a mohair sweater, even though mohair is not, you know, compatible with my skin. I probably spent like 60 to 80 hours working on this. I will probably think very long and hard before I do a 2-stranded mohair anything ever again. But when I look at the finished result, was it worth it? Yes. And now for the 2 accessories that I managed to knit. This hat was actually the first thing that I knit in 2024. I love the colors. You guys can see I love color. This is just in Genmu Merino. Basically, I'm using all of my knits as an excuse to go somewhere cold. And last but not least, I knit these mittens. When I saw the pattern, I couldn't help myself. I had to make them. I did actually finish both pairs in 2025, but I did start in 2024. I love the design of these. These are so beautiful. Definitely one of the more impractical things I've knit. Are these not the cutest mittens you've ever seen? Hey guys, that's everything that I knit in 2024. I'm hoping 2025 will be the year of sweaters, cardigans, accessories, everything. Knitting has been such a release for me. It's such a good hobby. It brings me so much peace in my brain. If you guys want to get into knitting, I highly recommend. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Finish the ultra easy slippers with me. So the first thing you're going to do is take one side and turn it inside out, and then you're going to put your hand in the one that's inside out and then put that one inside the one that is right side out, if that makes sense. So it looks like this. And then next you're going to sew together the ends. So here I am sewing them shut first before sewing them together. I'm definitely not an expert, so I just sewed them this way. Then once it's fully sewn, you're going to sew them together, just like this. It really doesn't take that long. I think finishing them took maybe 5 minutes total. And then once you get to the last loop, you're going to make a little knot so it doesn't come out, and then put it through the back.
I've decided to knit a sweater. Have I knitted before? No. Anyways, here's the yarn I'm using. I really hope it works up nice because these colors are so cute. This is my first ever attempt at knitting. I've crocheted for 5 years, but knitting? I've tried to learn my entire life and it's never made sense. But I'm determined to knit this sweater if it kills me, which it might. I'm casting on 65 and I've decided to literally make rectangles and sew them together to make a sweater. That seems easy enough. The first few rows felt like literal torture. It took me hours to figure out the right tension. 10 rows in and we're still alive. The yarn hasn't fought me back yet, but let's not jinx it. Knitting takes so long. I would have had an entire crochet sweater by now. Row 30 is kinda a sleeve, yay. Then tragedy struck, my carpal tunnel. I had to take a break for a few days, but anyway, we're at row 40, and I think this is a good spot to try decreasing the sleeve, so stay tuned for part 2 where I try to figure that out.
What do people do who don't drink?
I don't know. Knit?
Knit? Knit? Are you kidding me? Maybe. Okay, so it turns out I am like crazy good at knitting.
My step-by-step sweater by Florence is officially complete. I just took it off the blocking board and I finished it at 2 a.m. last night and I needed to block it so I could wear it today. So I blocked it, tossed a bunch of fans on it, and it dried perfect. This fit exactly how I wanted it to be, like down to the millicentimeter. That's not even a thing, but like it's so perfect. It does ride up a little bit in the back. I did do the German short rows. I feel like I only did 2. I feel like I honestly could have done more, but I know for next time. I'm in love with this color. It turned out amazing. The only mistake I did is during the German short rows, I purled when I should have knit, or knit when I should have purled, who knows. So I have these little markers here, but I love it because that just lets me know which is the front and it makes it so easy. But for my first ever knit project, I am absolutely in love with this. It turned out so cute. Are you kidding me? I need recommendations as to what to knit next. I have a bunch of things like saved, but they're all really complex and I kind of want something a little like this, like simple to make. So leave your recommendations in the comments below, but I cannot believe that I made this with my own 2 hands. Genuinely insane.
Tiny garments for the tiny people in your house like this is a reminder to use superwash yarn. This is a Sunday dress by pt.10 and it is knitted in drops Nord, and this is a fingering weight yarn. This looks tiny, but with fingering weight yarn this took forever. I love it. I will probably knit this again. This is worn all the time. We use it all the time. That's why it makes me a little bit upset that it's very stained today. Thankfully, it's in a dark yarn. Even though it's not superwash yarn, it's still washable, but it would just be so much easier if I could just throw it in the wash and don't even think about it. If this was just a t-shirt or something that I bought at a store, honestly, I would have probably thrown it away. But because I make this with my hands, I'm gonna try to wash it. I prefer the feeling of non-superwash yarn because it's so soft, it's so plush. And superwash yarn can be soft and plush too, but I feel like it's just not the same thing. Know that next time I re-knit this, because I will, because I love this pattern so much, this is going to be in superwash yarn.
Let's talk about some things you might not have known about free knitting patterns while I work on stitching up the crown of this hat and weaving in all the loose ends. You see, a couple weeks ago, some knitting pattern designers discovered that there was a Discord sharing copies of their paid-for knitting patterns, and they were not getting paid for the copies of patterns that were being shared in the Discord. This started a lot of heated conversations on various social media platforms, and in some places spun off into a conversation about whether free knitting patterns that are already offered for free are any good and whether people should consider using them. I saw a lot of misconceptions floating around about those free knitting patterns, and so I thought I'd pop on here as a knitting pattern designer who does share both free and paid knitting patterns to talk about those misconceptions. The most common misconception I saw was that if a pattern is offered for free, the designer isn't getting paid anyway. The rationale then goes that if the designer isn't getting paid, then there's no harm in downloading a PDF of the pattern and sharing it around, or printing it off and giving photocopies to friends. But if you understand how modern microbusinesses operate, especially modern microbusinesses with monetized blogs, you immediately know why this argument is flawed. Just because a pattern is free for the knitter to use doesn't mean that the designer isn't getting paid for it every time somebody uses that pattern. For example, when I offer a pattern for free, usually I am offering it on my blog as a blog post. My blog is monetized with ads, and that means that even though the knitter is not paying me for the pattern, the ad companies who are paying to place ads on my blog do pay me for that pattern. But even a blog that isn't monetized with ads is still earning some benefit for the knitting pattern designer when people come to that blog and use the pattern there. Regular visitors to a blog are more likely to sign up for that designer's newsletter so that the designer can grow their audience and eventually sell more of their paid patterns. Which leads me to the second common misconception. I saw a lot of people saying that they think designers only publish a pattern for free when they're not confident in the pattern or they're not serious about pattern designing. While that may be true for some designers, I know many very serious designers who also offer their patterns for free, either some of their patterns or all of their patterns, and there are a lot of good reasons for doing so. One reason is that many of us know knitters feel more comfortable buying a pattern from somebody if they know what that person's pattern writing style looks like, and so having a couple of free patterns available gives people a chance to figure out whether our pattern writing style works for them. Often designers will also offer a free pattern as an incentive to get somebody to sign up for their newsletter list, again so that they can grow their community and have a better chance of selling their paid patterns. For me, when I offer a free pattern, I also sometimes do it because the pattern itself is relatively simple and I know it's going to appeal more to beginner knitters, and those knitters are going to be less likely to want to use a paid pattern when they're still trying to get the hang of things. But again, because of my blog monetization, I know that I will still be compensated for that pattern in another way. And finally, I saw a lot of people saying that they think that free patterns are just not as good as paid patterns. That is sometimes true, especially where the designer is not committed to designing knitting patterns as a serious side business or full-time career. But I also know many designers who offer exclusively free patterns. Their bread and butter is their free patterns. And if their free patterns are bad, nobody's going to use them and they are not going to earn an income. So the patterns have to still be good. For those who use 1 or 2 free patterns as advertising, nobody's going to want to buy their paid pattern if the free pattern is no good. As for me, I put my free patterns through the same tech editing process that I do for my paid patterns. Anyway, hope that helps clear up some confusion, and if you have any questions about how free patterns work, feel free to drop them in the comments.